By the autumn of 1983, the geopolitical temperature between the United States and the Soviet Union had reached a record high. Both superpowers had stockpiled enough nuclear warheads to extinguish global civilization multiple times over, shifting the military posture of both nations to permanent high-alert readiness. Only 3 weeks prior, Soviet forces had shot down a civilian airline, Korean Airlines Flight 007, after it accidentally crossed into Soviet airspace. The resulting international outcry left the Kremlin convinced that a preemptive American strike was not just a possibility, but an imminent certainty. Deep in the forests outside Moscow, the Serpukhov 15 bunker served as the nerve center for the Oko early warning network. This subterranean facility was a listening post built to detect the thermal signatures of American missiles seconds after they left their silos. In this climate of total distrust, both nations had delegated the task of monitoring for the apocalypse to a web of unblinking automated surveillance systems. On the night of September 26th, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was the duty officer in charge. His instructions were mechanical: monitor the computer displays and, upon detecting a launch, immediately notify the Soviet High Command. That report would function as the primary catalyst for a retaliatory strike. Once Petrov moved the data up the chain, the Soviet military protocol for a counterlaunch was designed to be swift and irreversible. At 12:24 a.m., the bunker's silence was broken. The computerized warning system registered a massive alert, illuminating the room in neon red as the main screen displayed a single flashing command: start. The system initially identified a single American missile. Seconds later, 4 more red vectors arced across the ocean. The computer diagnostic returned a status of high reliability, signaling a physical launch, not a software glitch. Petrov now had less than 20 minutes to decide whether to follow his orders or trust his own judgment. The survival of everyone outside those bunker walls depended on his next move. He faced a paralyzing calculation. If the missiles were real and he delayed his report, his country would be destroyed without a chance to respond. If he reported a false alarm as a real attack, he would trigger the very nuclear war he was trying to prevent. Despite the high reliability flashing on his screen, Petrov found the data to be inconsistent with everything he knew about nuclear strategy. This visualization of the 1983 global stockpile highlights the logical flaw Petrov spotted. A genuine American first strike would involve hundreds, if not thousands, of missiles launched simultaneously to cripple Soviet defenses. Launching only 5 warheads was strategically nonsensical, as it would leave the Soviet arsenal almost entirely intact for a devastating counterattack. Petrov also remained skeptical of the hardware. The Oko satellite system was a new, complex, and relatively unproven piece of technology that had been rushed into service to keep pace with the Americans. Facing the absolute certainty of his sensors, Petrov chose to prioritize human intuition. He would gamble that the machines were wrong. He picked up the telephone, called the duty officer at Soviet military headquarters, and officially reported the alarm as a system malfunction. By categorizing the data as a false alarm, he single-handedly stalled the retaliatory chain of command. However, this decision created a terrifying period of uncertainty. While satellites could see launches from space, the Soviet Union's ground-based radar networks were unable to detect the missiles until they physically crossed the horizon. Petrov and his crew had to wait for exactly 18 minutes. They had no way of knowing if they were witnessing a glitch or if Moscow was about to be evaporated in a series of thermonuclear detonations. As the 18-minute window elapsed, the ground-based radar networks finally established a lock on inbound corridors. The screens remained clear. There were no missiles. The sirens in the bunker finally cut out, replaced by a heavy, exhausted silence. One man's willingness to absorb the paralyzing terror of waiting had prevented a catastrophe that would have ended modern civilization. An investigation into the failure revealed a software flaw that no designer had anticipated. The Oko satellite had reached a rare orbital alignment where it passed between the sun and high-altitude clouds over North Dakota. The sensor mistook the intense glint of sunlight reflecting off the cloud tops for the thermal plume of an ascending rocket. Petrov was neither celebrated nor promoted. Instead, he was subjected to intense interrogations and a formal reprimand. His decision had exposed critical flaws in a multi-billion-ruble military program, embarrassing the Soviet leadership. His actions remained a state secret for over a decade. Petrov was quietly reassigned and eventually retired to a small apartment on a meager pension. He lived in near-total obscurity until the collapse of the Soviet Union allowed the story to reach the public. Until his death in 2017, Petrov maintained that he was not a hero. He viewed himself as a man who happened to be at the right desk at the right time, doing his job. Today, early warning networks operate on a scale Petrov could not have imagined. Artificial intelligence algorithms now filter threat data at speeds vastly beyond human observation, making split-second decisions about what constitutes a genuine launch. The 1983 incident was caused by a simple sensor misidentifying a flash of light. Modern systems process far more variables, but they still operate based on predefined logical thresholds. As we compress the time between detection and response, we are systematically removing the 18-minute window that allowed Petrov to doubt his sensors. Petrov's legacy proves that human hesitation serves as the final, vital barrier when the cold logic of our machines dictate our destruction.